I wasn't supposed to be there that morning. The flight back home was last minute. A cheap ticket. A quiet escape from a life that suddenly felt too heavy. I told no one I was coming. Not Mom. Not Dad. Not even my sister. It was just supposed to be a surprise visit. But when I walked into that old house, what I saw made me stop in the doorway, my suitcase still in hand. My breath caught midair. There they were, Mom and Dad, sitting on the living room floor, laughing, playing cards. At first, I thought maybe I was dreaming. For years, their laughter had been replaced by silence, their conversations by clipped phrases and polite smiles. I'd grown used to the sound of dishes clinking in place of words. But now, they were playing. Like two people who hadn't forgotten what joy felt like. "Hi," I managed, though my voice came out smaller than I wanted. Mom turned, startled, and then she smiled. That soft, tired smile I hadn't seen in so long. "You're home early," Dad chuckled. "Guess the surprise is on you this time." I tried to laugh, but something about the scene felt strange, too perfect, too sudden. "What's going on?" I asked, placing my bag down. "You too seem different." Mum exchanged a quick glance with Dad. It wasn't fear or guilt. It was something else. Something secret. "Oh, we're just playing a game," she said quickly, brushing imaginary dust off her knees. "A game," I repeated. "Since when do you two play games together?" Dad looked down, shuffling the cards in his hand. "Since this morning." He said it casually, but there was a pause in his tone. A pause that made me realize something had shifted. Something big. That evening, the house buzzed with a strange warmth. Mum cooked her famous chicken soup, humming under her breath. Dad set the table, whistling off-key like he used to when I was little. For a while, I just watched them. Like an outsider watching two actors play a role that didn't belong to them anymore. When dinner was done, I helped Mom wash the dishes. The kitchen light flickered softly over her face, and I noticed the way her hands trembled slightly. "Mum," I said quietly, "did something happen?" She froze, a plate half rinsed under the water. "What do you mean?" "You and Dad, I've never seen you this happy." She didn't answer at first. Then finally she sighed. "Sometimes, life gives you a second chance when you least expect it. Did something happen?" I pressed again, my heart beating faster. "Something I should know." Mum turned off the tap and faced me. Her eyes looked tired but peaceful, like someone who had finally stopped fighting. "You'll understand soon," she said softly. "Just give it time." Later that night, I walked into the living room to grab my phone charger. The lights were dim, and the house was quiet except for the ticking of the wall clock. That's when I saw it. A letter on the coffee table, folded neatly, with my name written on the front. My stomach tightened. It wasn't Mom's handwriting. And it wasn't Dad's either. It was someone else's. Someone I hadn't thought about in years. I picked it up, my hands trembling. The paper smelled faintly of pine and old perfume. Inside was a short note, just a few lines. "You deserve to know the truth. They've been keeping it from you for too long. No name. No signature. Just those words." I stared at them, my mind spinning. Who could have written this? And what truth were they talking about? Then I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, careful. Mom was standing in the doorway. Her face was pale. Her eyes went straight to the letter in my hand. "Where did you find that?" she whispered. "Right here," I said, my voice shaking. "Mum, what is this?" She didn't answer. She just reached out slowly, as if she could somehow take it all back before I read too much. "Please," she said, her voice trembling, Don't show that to your father. The way she said it, the fear, the urgency made my heart drop because for the first time that day, I realized something simple and terrifying. Whatever had brought them together again wasn't what it seemed. And the truth, whatever it was, had been waiting for me to come home. The letter burned in my pocket, heavy against my leg, but I couldn't bring myself to open it yet. Instead, I sank onto the couch, letting memories take over. I remembered Mom and Dad as I first knew them. My mother, laughing under the library's dim lights, holding a book she claimed would change her life. My father, awkward and nervous, trying to impress her with a joke that fell flat. She had rolled her eyes, and yet she had smiled, the kind of smile that lit the entire room. They were strangers once, two halves of different worlds. Mum loved painting, evenings spent in her small studio, lost in colours. Dad loved music, his guitar always leaning against the corner of his room. They met at a local fair, Mom showing off her sketches, Dad strumming the chords of a familiar tune. I'd heard the story 1,000 times as a child, but hearing it again, I saw it differently. That first spark wasn't just attraction. It was recognition. Two people understanding each other before the world even had a chance to interfere. And then came the years that pulled them apart. Dad got a job offer in another city. Mom had just started her small gallery. The distance wasn't big at first, just a few hours, a few missed calls. But it grew. Conversations became short, silences long. Misunderstandings piled up like bricks in a wall neither of them knew how to tear down. Remember the night they argued in the kitchen? Words like, "You don't care," and "You're never here," floated through the air. I'd hidden under the staircase, listening, heart pounding. I thought that was the end. That laughter had vanished forever. Yet here they were, months later, sitting on the floor of the same living room, smiling like it had all been forgotten. How had that happened? I closed my eyes and let the flashbacks come, one after another. I saw Mom waiting outside the train station, umbrella in hand, hoping Dad's bus would be on time. I saw Dad leaving a note on her windshield, a silly poem about missing her. I saw them dancing once in the kitchen at night, the radio playing softly, feet moving on old tiles. Small moments, fragments of love they hadn't let go of, even when everything else seemed to fail. I saw the arguments too, the silence that followed, the trips cancelled, the phone calls ignored. It wasn't betrayal, not really. Just life pressing down, making it impossible to stay close. And yet, even in the quietest, loneliest moments, neither of them forgot. That night, after dinner, I watched them sit side by side on the couch. Mom had her sketchbook open. Dad was strumming lightly on his guitar. The room was filled with colors and notes, a harmony I hadn't thought possible. "You know," Dad said suddenly, looking at her, "I used to think the silence was the end. But maybe it was just the pause before the music." Mum smiled, brushing her fingers across the page. "We were always listening, even when we didn't realize it." The words made my chest ache. Love wasn't perfect. It was messy. It was waiting. And somehow, miraculously, it had found a way back. I thought the story was simple. Spark, love, separation, reunion. But the letter in my pocket reminded me it wasn't. There were pieces missing. Curiosity gnawed at me. I couldn't help myself. I unfolded it. The handwriting was familiar now that I studied it. Careful, neat. And the message made my heart stop. If you want to understand why they finally came back together, look behind the photo on the mantel. I froze. Behind the photo on the mantel? The same mantel I'd seen hundreds of times, where Mom and Dad's wedding picture stood. My pulse quickened. What could be hidden there? A secret? A confession? Something that could rewrite everything I thought I knew about their past. Before I could move, I heard Mom's soft voice from the hallway. "You found the letter," she said quietly. "I was afraid you would." Her eyes weren't angry. They were careful, cautious, and for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about the past. This was about something no one had been ready to tell me, until now. And suddenly, the fragments of their past, the smiles, the arguments, the music and colors. None of it felt like the full story. Because behind that photo, there was a truth I wasn't prepared for. The morning sunlight spilled across the living room floor, catching the dust in tiny golden streaks. I held the letter in my hand, my fingers trembling, but I couldn't move. Mom and Dad were there, just a few feet away, arranging board games like nothing had changed. I cleared my throat. I saw it. Mom froze, a spatula in her hand. Dad glanced up from the chessboard he was setting. Neither spoke at first. "Saw what?" Dad asked finally, his voice calm but guarded. "The letter," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. "The one that said, to check behind the photo." Mom swallowed. You don't have to explain," Dad interrupted gently. His eyes met mine, full of that strange, familiar warmth and something else I couldn't name. Regret? Hesitation? Hope? I hesitated. "Then why send it?" Mom's hands trembled slightly. She set the spatula down. "Because it's time you knew. You deserved the truth." I wanted to demand answers, to rip it all open, but something in their quiet made pause. Instead, I walked over to the mantel. The wedding photo stared back at me, young Mom and Dad, smiling at a future they thought they could control. Behind it, a small envelope waited, taped neatly. My heart thudded as I pulled it free. "You really shouldn't have done that," Dad murmured. But he didn't stop me. Inside the envelope were 2 photographs and a note. One picture was of Mum, standing under a rain-soaked tree, holding a small bundle. The other was of Dad, sitting on a bench across the street, staring at her. The note read, "We thought it was over. We didn't know how to fix it. But we never stopped caring." I blinked, my chest tight. What does it mean?" Mom stepped closer, hesitant. "That day, years ago, when we argued after you were born, we thought we might not make it. We thought distance would save us from more pain. But it didn't. It only made us realize how much we needed each other." Dad reached out, lightly touching her arm. "We lost time," he said quietly, "but we never lost us." I sank onto the couch, the weight of their words settling over me. For so long, I'd believed in endings. Broken families, closed doors, silences that never healed. But here they were, standing in front of me, proving that beginnings could come after endings, too. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Mom looked down, ashamed. "Because we weren't ready. Because we needed to find our way back before we could ask you to understand." Dad nodded. "And because some truths are easier to show than to say. We wanted you to see us, not just hear about it." I looked at them, really looked, and noticed the small gestures that made my heart ache. The way Mom's hand brushed Dad's when she handed him a mug. The way Dad smiled without words when Mom caught him watching her. Those tiny moments of connection, unnoticed by the world, were everything. The tension in the room shifted suddenly when Dad leaned forward. "There's one more thing," he said, his voice low. "Something we never shared. Something that might explain everything you've been feeling these past years." I froze. "What do you mean?" Mum bit her lip. "It's about why we separated after you were little. Why the silence grew between us. You deserve to know. But it's not easy." Dad's gaze met mine, steady and unflinching. We didn't just drift apart. There was a choice, a fear, and we let it grow. We let pride get in the way of us, of family, of happiness. My throat tightened. So, you could have stayed together? Mom nodded slowly. We could have. But we weren't ready. We weren't brave enough. Silence filled the room, heavy and tender at once. I felt my chest swell with emotion. Love, heartbreak, relief, and something like awe. You stayed apart. Because of fear? I asked. Dad swallowed. Yes, and we regret it every single day. But today we found our way back. And we want you to be part of it. I blinked. The room felt too small for all the feelings crashing inside me. The laughter from the previous days, the letters, the photographs, they all collided into one single moment. And then Mom whispered, almost to herself, "We've waited so long to be honest. Even with each other." Dad reached for her hand. "And we're ready now." I realized then that this wasn't just about them. It was about all of us, the chance to forgive, to reconnect, to reclaim the love we thought was gone. But before I could respond, the phone rang. Mom picked it up, listened for a moment, and her face went pale. Dad's hand tightened around hers. "Who is it?" I asked, my voice small. Mom swallowed. "It's someone from the past. Someone who knows everything." I stared at them, heart racing. The reunion I'd walked into, the laughter, the board games, the warmth. It suddenly felt fragile. Because just when I thought the hardest part was over, the past had come crashing back into the present. Mom's hands shook as she hung up the phone. The room was suddenly quieter, the sunlight softer, almost hesitant. "Who was that?" I asked. She didn't answer at first. Her eyes stayed on the floor. Dad reached for her hand, holding it like it might break. "It's someone who knows the reason we left," she said finally, voice low. "The reason we stayed apart for so long." I froze. "You mean the real reason?" Mom nodded. "Yes, not arguments, not distance. Something else. Something we thought we could bury." Dad exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding the air in for decades. "It's time you heard it. All of it." I sat down on the couch, my hands gripping the edge. The air felt heavy with waiting, but I needed it. I needed the truth. Mom started first. "After your birth, we were young, terrified. We wanted the best for you and for us, but we didn't know how. We made mistakes, choices we thought were protecting everyone, but really, we were protecting ourselves from pain." I nodded slowly. "I understand, but what mistakes?" Dad swallowed. "The biggest mistake was silence. We stopped talking about the hard things. We stopped sharing our fears. We assumed the other person knew. But assumptions are dangerous." Mom's voice broke slightly. "We both felt like giving up at different times. We thought leaving was easier than facing the fear that we'd fail as a family." I stared at them. "You left because of fear?" "Yes," Dad said simply. "Fear of failing each other, fear of hurting you, fear of not being enough." I wanted to argue, to yell that they should have tried harder, but the words caught in my throat. The quiet honesty in their eyes made me pause. Mom reached for the envelope I'd found behind the photo. She opened it and handed me the small, faded note inside. "Read this," she whispered. I unfolded it. It was a letter from my father, written long before I could understand it. "I love you. I am scared. I don't know how to be the father or the husband I want to be. Please forgive me someday." I looked up. Dad's eyes glistened, his lips tight. "I wrote that the night we almost lost everything," he said. "I never sent it." I was too afraid you'd hate me for it. I could see the weight lifting off their shoulders. Just by speaking. Years of regret spilling into the quiet of our living room, Mom added softly. We weren't ready to forgive ourselves. And we thought you wouldn't understand. But maybe, seeing us now, you can. I didn't know what to say. All the anger I had stored, all the nights I felt the gap in our home, suddenly melted into something softer, relief, maybe. Or just the understanding that love had been there all along. Buried under fear. Dad leaned back, voice gentle. We stayed apart thinking it was safer. But it never was. Every day we felt the emptiness. Every day we missed the laughter. And now we want to try again. With honesty. With trust. With you by our side. I swallowed. I think I understand. But it's hard. You can't just erase years. Mom shook her head. No, we can't. And we won't pretend it didn't happen. But we can choose now. Every day to be present. To be a family. I looked at them. Really looked. And saw the people I had missed. Vulnerable. Flawed, but finally open. For a long moment, we sat together in silence, the weight of the truth settling between us. It was uncomfortable, raw, but also freeing. Then Dad reached for the mantle, his fingers brushing the back of the wedding photo. There's one more thing, he said, voice low, almost a whisper. I leaned forward. What is it? Mum's eyes darted to Dad, worry and fear flickering across her face. Are you sure you want to hear this now? Dad nodded. Yes, it's part of the truth. Something we never shared with anyone. Something that could change everything. My heart raced. What could possibly be left? What secret was so big it could shift everything we just uncovered? Mum's hand covered Dad's, and their eyes met in a silent plea. You have to decide, she said finally, turning to me. Do you want to know? Or do you want to keep the story we've rebuilt today? I stared at them, breath caught. The room felt smaller, the light heavier, every heartbeat loud. The choice was mine. To know the final truth, or to leave it behind. I wanted to speak, to demand it, to rip open the secret, but something deep inside made me hesitate, because some truths, once revealed, can't be taken back. I stared at them, my chest tight, the quiet of the room pressing in. The truth hovered between us, fragile and heavy. Dad took a deep breath. Years ago, when we separated, it wasn't just fear or silence. There was a choice someone else forced us to make. A misunderstanding, a decision that wasn't ours, but we carried it anyway. Mom nodded. It changed everything. We thought we had failed. We blamed ourselves. We let time slip through our fingers without talking, without trying to fix it. But we never stopped loving each other or you. I felt my throat tighten. All the puzzles of my childhood, the quiet dinners, the long absences, the tension that hung over holidays, suddenly fit together. So, it wasn't really your fault. I asked quietly. No, Dad said. Not ours alone. And not yours. I sank onto the couch, my hands trembling slightly. The letter, the photos, the board games, they weren't just reminders of the past. They were proof that love can survive even when life pulls you apart. Mom reached out, taking my hand in hers. We stayed apart too long, she said. We lost years. But we're here now. That's what matters. Dad smiled softly. We can't change the past, but we can choose the future. Together. I swallowed hard. The idea of forgiveness, of letting go of the years of confusion and hurt, felt lighter than I expected. I nodded slowly. Okay. Together. The three of us sat there in silence for a while, letting the words settle. The sunlight shifted through the window, warm and golden, Outside, the wind rustled the leaves. The house felt alive again. Later, I wandered into the kitchen. The smell of freshly baked bread filled the air. Mum was humming softly as she wiped the counter. Dad leaned against the doorway, watching her with a quiet smile. I noticed a small envelope tucked under the fruit bowl. Curious, I picked it up. My name was written in Dad's careful handwriting. Inside, a short note read, "We may have lost time, but love never left this house. And it never left us." I smiled, tears welling in my eyes. The simple gesture, a message from the past, a promise for the future, made me realize something. Love doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it hides in small notes, quiet laughter, a shared glance. I turned to look at Mom and Dad. They were playing cards again, laughing softly, just like that first morning I arrived. But now it felt different. Stronger, steady, real. I walked over, sitting between them. "Mind if I join?" I asked. "Of course," Mom said, grinning. "About time," Dad added, pretending to shuffle the deck clumsily. We laughed together, the sound echoing through the house. It was warm. It was home. Later that evening, we stepped onto the porch, watching the sun dip behind the hills. The sky glowed pink and orange. A gentle breeze carried the scent of pine and earth. Mom leaned on Dad's shoulder. "We've come a long way," she said quietly. "We have," Dad agreed. "And we have so far to go still." But that's okay. As long as we're together, it doesn't feel so far anymore. I watched them, feeling a peace I hadn't known in years. The misunderstandings, the distance, the unspoken words, they didn't matter anymore. What mattered was this moment. The present. The fact that love had returned, patient and enduring. I reached out and took their hands. The three of us held each other in silence, letting the sky and the wind and the quiet night speak for all the words we didn't need to say. Then, as the first stars appeared, I noticed something small, a single folded note tucked into the railing of the porch. Curious, I opened it. Love never really leaves. It waits. It finds its way home. I smiled softly. The handwriting was familiar. Mom's. And in that instant I knew it was true. No matter the years lost, the mistakes made, the silence endured, love had always been here. Waiting, patient, quietly unstoppable. I looked at my parents, their faces calm, warm, alive. I felt it too. The weight lifted. The story was complete, but not over. Life would go on, and so would we, together. And as I let the night settle around us, I whispered, almost to myself, "Some love is too strong to ever disappear."